Well, is your old gal getting a little sluggish as she gets older? I'm talking about your bike. Well, we got this Evo on the lift. It was my dad's that my son-in-law is buying. He's been riding it to town and noticed it's getting very sluggish. Accelerating, it's hard to go. Something's not right. So this is a 1997 Evo Dyna. And let's see what's going on with it. So welcome back to Butler Customs Motorcycle Shop. Now we've got a big ride coming up tomorrow, first official ride of the season here in Tennessee. So we want to try to get him fixed up if we can. Now, if you're running sluggish and you notice you don't have as much power as you used to, it's kind of like what you need for a motor to operate. You need three things. You need spark, you need fuel, you need compression. So I suspect it to be one of those. I don't expect it to be compression. The motor's good and tight. The base gaskets aren't leaking. We can check that, but I think it's going to be something else. Now, it could be ignition, and I guess ignition, kind of deals with all three of those things: compression, fuel, and spark. Because if that's off, then it's going to throw everything else off. But it's not backfiring. It's not popping out of the carburetor. Now, she is cold-natured. She is so hard to start when cold. So maybe that's part of the issue. But I suspect something's going on either with spark or with fuel. So I already got a plug out, and here's why. I shot about an hour's worth of video on this and sat down to edit it. And for the first, probably 30 minutes, there's no audio. So I don't know if I didn't turn something on or plug something in. Can you hear me? So something happened with that. So I'm like, okay, well, let me get it back on the lift to reshoot a video. So you'll see the front spark plugs out. We did find the issue. So I don't know how it's running yet. We're going to let him ride it in the morning. He's going to get some new plugs just because of the condition of them. And then when we get back over the weekend, I'll end this video and tell you if we've kind of helped. There are some things he's going to have to address here soon. So let's get into it. All right, sorry for the voiceover here. I lost a whole lot of audio. So if you have a poor running condition, or really kind of any running condition that's not right with your motor, the very first thing you want to start with, the thing that'll tell you the most about what's going on with your bike, is the plugs. And so you want to pull the plugs out and see what the color and condition of the plugs are. That's going to tell you exactly if the bike is running rich, if it's fouling out, if it's running lean. If there's a lot of oil on the plugs, there might be some ring issues, valve issues. Really, your plugs kind of tell you they're the soothsayers of your engine. So always start there and pull your plugs out. So I'm going to get these plugs out here, the front and the rear, and see what we've got. All right, the front plug there, as you can see, is powdery white. So we have a lean condition on the front plug. And let's inspect the rear plug. I would probably assume it's the same kind. It's in the same condition. Yes, so both front and rear are running super lean. So that tells us that this is going to be an issue with fuel delivery. So with the bike running white like that, the plugs running white, you're not getting the adequate fuel to give a good kind of a light dark burn to the plugs. So if those plugs would have been black, so here we want to check and make sure first we get good fuel flow out of the petcock. So I'll start with the tank and we'll work to the carb. It's probably going to be a carburetor issue. but it's good to start there. So I want to make sure I've got fuel flow coming out of the petcock. Now this petcock has a vacuum petcock on it, so fuel will only flow when the bike is actually cranking. There's a vacuum line on the back of the carburetor that will suck air, and that opens up a valve in the petcock and lets fuel flow. So what I want to do is take the line off here at the petcock, crank the bike, and put a cup up under there or something to catch the fuel, and just make sure we've got good fuel flow. It could be the valve inside that petcock has just kind of, stopped working on us. Now usually the first sign of it not working anymore is it'll actually start leaking out of that petcock assembly, but this isn't leaking. So let's take this hose off here and we'll crank the bike and just see how our fuel flows out. It's on the on switch right now. We'll check both on and reserve. And on these types, you don't have to turn the fuel petcock off, though it is a good habit. But fuel will only flow while the bike is cranking or running. So let me find me a cup here. And that's not going to fit. A mason jar. Alright, so I found a coffee cup here. I'll try to angle it where you can see the fuel flow while I hold the cup and I turn the ignition on and then crank. We're not worried about it running. Of course the plugs are out. We're just looking for fuel flow. And there we've got really good fuel flow out of the petcock. Now let's check the reserve and do the same process. Yep, good fuel flow there. Okay, so it's not a petcock issue or the filter up inside the petcock. And let's go to the other side of the bike. It's going to be an issue with the carburetor. Now, with these plugs, we'll put those back in because we're probably going to be cranking and trying to see if our accelerator pump's working, if the slide's going up and down just visually, so we can inspect if it's just something like that. This has another inline fuel filter on that we put on that's over on the carb side, just in case that metal screen filter inside the petcock doesn't catch everything. This other paper filter does, and it works pretty good, but maybe it's an issue with that and it's not letting fuel flow back into the carburetor when you accelerate. So as you accelerate, maybe the fuel's running out in the float bowl. So we'll look at the fuel flow on the other side, on the carb side. So I'll hook the fuel line back up so we can test it on the other side. But while we're over here, let's just go ahead and test for spark. Now these plugs look pretty burnt, so we will be replacing the plugs for them. But while we're here, let's take a gander at the spark condition. I need to get me a new spark tester. It's kind of on its last leg. I don't know why they had these spark plug wires so long, especially on the rear. But what we're going to do is just crank and make sure we got good spark. We do on the front. And now let's check the rear as well. Now I didn't think we would have any kind of issue with spark looking at the plug. Now if the plug would have been black and ashy, really dry looking, then yeah, we would have a spark issue, but seems like we don't. And we'll check the rear here. We'll give it a good crank, and you might not be able to see it on the camera. Yep, okay, good spark on the rear as well. Now we'll move over to the carb side and check fuel flow on the carb side. So over here on the carb side, we've got to take the air breather box off. 5/16 gets that nut off. Then the air filter breather itself looks pretty good. Doesn't look like it's got a lot of trash or anything in it. 3/16 Allen on these. We'll get that air breather off. Air breather looks like it's in pretty good condition, so we're going to reuse that. I don't believe it's an airflow issue. I believe it's a fuel issue. Now we do have a leaky breather bolt over here. That's usually just due to washers need to be replaced that go kind of behind that crossover breather bar up at the top. No big issue really on that. These are 1/2 inches on these studs that run into the carburetor, so when you're tightening these, you don't want to over tighten them. And when you take them off, I like to use a wrench, not any kind of power tool. That way, nothing strips out inside the actual carb itself. Now all that's left are these breather bolts, and they are 3/4 inch. And you will have to use a wrench to get in there because they kind of set behind that breather assembly. You really can't get a socket in there. It'll have several washers that run down that breather bolt. So when you take it off, just kind of keep up with your washers. There should be one behind and in front of that crossover. It kind of keeps the oil from coming out on your heads, which is happening in the front. So we'll screw these off, and then that whole assembly can come off. There went a washer, so keep up with them. And then the breather crossover, you can separate then from that breather assembly. And on this bike, he's got a tube. Instead of it running back into the carburetor, he's got a tube that runs out into a catch filter. And you can see how bad that's been leaking on the front. So we'll try to fix that with some new washers. But now we can inspect the carburetor. Up there at the top, well, you can see the oil there. Up at the top here, you can see the extra fuel filter and line that we put in. It looks good and clean, but let's verify that we got good fuel flow. Because sometimes when you add an inline fuel filter, if your petcock filter is kind of dirty or clogged up, you might not get good fuel flow when you add an extra filter. And this has got the good brass inlet fitting on it, which I love. I hate those plastic ones. So we'll just take this clamp off here and get some pliers on that hose, give it a little twist and pull it up and off. I do get sound back here in a minute on these videos, so I apologize for having to dub over. I know the audio quality when I do that is not very good at all. So I'll get a cup and we'll crank again and we'll see what kind of flow that we get out. Alright there, hopefully you can see as we crank. There we go. So we do have good fuel flow coming out there, and that's enough to fill that bowl up and under acceleration, still keep the bowl full. Harleys don't require a ton of fuel flow. You'd be surprised at how little fuel flow you can get out of a petcock and the bike still operate fine. And actually it's kind of better. You don't have so much fuel. If your float ever gets stuck or something, it's not just gushing out everywhere. So it's going to definitely be a carburetor issue. And I'll pull the slide up and immediately I feel this slide does not feel right. It is dropping down way too quick. So there's something wrong with this slide. Now to verify this, I can put my mouth over that hole right in the center, that long slotted hole, and I can blow, like kind of giving it a kiss. And when I blow, that slide does not come up. So I'm putting pressure over that hole there, and the slide should come up if the diaphragm's working. And that diaphragm is indeed not working. So there's an issue with that slide. Now the way that operates, when you're going down the road and get on the throttle and give it the go-go, that slide should come up, raising the needle up and letting more fuel in, and the slide is not. So this would explain why it's so sluggish. So we're going to pull this carb off, and we are going to definitely be examining the diaphragm in the top and why this isn't. So of course, as carb just slides off of the intake boot, we will inspect the boot, but I think I put a new one on last year or the year before that, so it should be fine to reuse, but we will examine it. Now I'm coming over here to take the carburetor or the choke off so that it can drop down and we can pull it on out. Now your throttle cables, I do not ever loosen the throttle cable adjustments because I don't really have to. And if I can keep the throttle cable adjustments the same, then the customer has that same response to the throttle that they're used to. So what you can do is actually take this little bracket off back here. It's got a little screw here, a fat screw, and then it's got one in the top of the diaphragm cover. And when you take those two out, you can slide that throttle bracket off of its holding on the carb, and then you can actually just take the bracket off and get your cables out. So I'll get my choke cable all the way out of there so I can turn the carburetor over on its side and get to that screw that's in the top holding that bracket on. Now this screw will be longer than the other 3 screws that hold that cover on the top. So you want to keep up with it, and inside the cover will be a little brass, sometimes metal kind of sleeve that goes down in the top of that hole on your diaphragm cover. So you want to make sure that goes back in there on that bracket right there, or under the bracket. Now with the 2 screws out, I can just move that bracket to the side, and that gives me the slack to just pop my cables out. And then we can just let the bracket and all hang. And now I can take the vacuum line off, and the carburetor is free from the bike. And so let's go into the top here. Well, there's that little brass spacer fitting I want to keep up with. But let's go ahead and take these smaller screws out of the cover and see what's going on with our diaphragm. Now, if I remember correctly, I think I rebuilt this carb a couple years ago, so the diaphragm should be good. So I'm wondering what's going on, why it's not sliding. And the last screw here, I'll keep my thumb over the top of the cover because there is a spring in there. It's not under a great amount of tension, but it could pop off on you and the diaphragm cover fall and crack. Okay, so immediately you can probably see the problem. It is not the actual diaphragm, but the little click thing that holds the diaphragm onto the slide, that little white thing in there, has indeed broken. So the diaphragm is coming up with that white thing on top, but it is not pulling the slide up because it's become disconnected from the slide. So when I pull the spring out, you can see that white piece moving, and it should not be. It should be connected to the slide itself. You can see it just kind of hanging out to the side there, and it should not be doing that. So that piece, there's another white piece under the diaphragm, and that has separated from itself. So the diaphragm now just kind of comes off, and it should not do that. And there's our good metal slide there. And look how clean our needle looks. So the carb is filtering well. It's clean. There's nothing wrong with the carb except for this piece right here that has broken. I believe I've got a new piece that we can use his diaphragm and just get that piece on his diaphragm that he has in there, and that should hopefully fix the problem. That should be our issue right there. So I can imagine when he was going to get on the throttle, it wasn't doing much. It just would not go any more than, so there's just no power because that slide and the needle's not coming up because of this broken piece here. Alright, so we got everything back together, and the diaphragm is working, the slide's going up, the needle's raising. But now we have a new problem. So I'm starting the bike now, and as I squirt to make sure the accelerator pump is pumping, I see that it is not squirting in the right direction. So I'll try to get you in here so you can see what exactly is going on here. That accelerator pump squirter right there exposed in the top, that brass piece, it should be squirting just to the right of the needle and back into the throat of the carburetor. If you'll watch it closely, and I'll try to zoom in, it is actually squirting and hitting the side of the slide. So the fuel is not actually squirting back into the throat of the carburetor. And so that is an issue. We need to turn that and get that lined up to where it's squirting more in the back. So to do that, I'm going to drop the float bowl, and that brass piece will come out with it. I'm going to take some vice grips on here, and I'm going to turn it to where it lines up, a little bit better. And then after this clip, our audio should be back. And again, I apologize, but thank you for hanging out. Okay, and so I took the bottom of the carb off, and everything inside looked like it's brand new. The jets didn't have a bit of trash in it. The bottom of the float bowl didn't have any trash in it. This secondary fuel filter is really helping out. So I cranked it enough just to kind of fill the bowl, and now we'll squirt, and it should be going right between the needle and the slide. Oh, look at that. Squirting right back in there where it should. Alright, so got everything back together. I want to leave the air breather off because I want to make sure our diaphragm's coming up. So I'm going to start the bike. Where's my... Oh, I got to put my choke back on. Oh no, my battery. Okay, got a battery charger on it. I think he's got a bad battery. While it's running, I do want to check, make sure it's charging. But the plugs look like, it's firing good. Then we'll start looking at the time. And I just want to make sure this diaphragm slides up on this. That's a lot better. Alright, while it's running, I do see some of this has melted. There was no cover over this. So I thought it was gas at first that had come down here, but it's not. So his ignition is starting to go out. I did mark here so I know where we're at. Hard to turn where it's been glued. Lock that down there. Drop the idle. That's after revving it. So that's the problem. Wonder why his plugs weren't fouled out though. He's only running 9 volts right here. Okay, so he's got charging issues. It will charge while it is, revving, but it will not charge at idle. That's not good. So we'll need to be looking at a rectifier and stator issues. But it sounds like his timing is spot on. So I'm just going to button this back up for him. But I think his ignition is starting to go out. It is melting. We won't be able to fix this rectifier and stator before a ride tomorrow. I will clean that terminal off, but I put my spade connector right on the hot wire, which I think, yep. So that's the only wire coming back to the battery. So when you rev it and when it's driving down the road, it will charge, but it's not when it's idling. So I know that my circuit breaker between the stator and rectifier and the battery is working. If I didn't get any reading going up higher as I revved higher, then that would mean it's getting nothing. So I would start, of course, with that circuit breaker and work my way back. But with it gaining voltage as the RPMs go up, then you just got a stator or rectifier going out. Now, you know, if you watch my videos, I like to replace both when I replace one. We'll be throwing him some new plugs in here. What's he got in here? NGKs. I'd rather see him run Champions. Well, I'll let you know tomorrow when he goes on the ride to see if he had a little bit more power. If not, probably going to change that ignition out. All right, so I'll be back over the weekend and let you know how things went. Well, good Monday morning to you. We're back over the weekend. Had a really good Resurrection Day celebration. Whew. Ate a lot of food. Anyways, in the house. We're back from the ride. The ride went great. We left here from the shop. Of course, we always stop at the gas station in town. Got there and pulled up, and his eyes were big as quarters. And I thought, oh no, what happened? He said, man, we went around the first curve, and I got on it, and I'm used to it just not going, and it about went out from under me. So he was so happy. Had tons of power now. He said it's never ridden that good. So I don't know how long that diaphragm's not been diaphragming, but maybe adjusting the timing a little bit, fixing that fuel issue really brought things back around. Now, yes, we still have to address the stator and rectifier. I always use the Cycle Electrics, made in the USA, last 20 times longer than anything you're going to buy off eBay or Amazon. And be very careful. Some places will say they have Cycle Electrics, and it's a knockoff. So be careful where you order those from. Make sure it's a trusted site that you know you're getting an authentic Cycle Electric. So we'll have this back on the lift sometime, and we'll be replacing the stator and the rectifier and probably the ignition as well, since we're working on it. And Lucy, it was her first ride. Come out here, 2 kicks, fired right up. I don't know what's happened. Maybe it's going to be a good season. She did great. She rode better than she's probably ever ridden. And we went up to a little store that my wife showed me on Facebook. They were having kind of a biker's lunch. And we didn't have a big group with us. So I told Matt, I'm like, my son-in-law, I'm like, let's just ride up there and meet some new riders and hang out and check the place out. So we rode up there, probably about a 45-minute ride, back roads, beautiful day, great weather, and old milking store, the old OLE. Met the owner there. He come out and talked to us while we was eating. Probably 20 different bikers showed up from all different groups and sorts and parts of life, and had a really good time. Really nice folks. If you're ever up in the Bethpage, Westmoreland, Portland area, Lower Kentucky, swing by there. Really good folks. So we had a good time. And you know, with the kickstart only, when you get ready to leave, everybody stops. You know, it's like they're putting in bets. How many times this dude gonna kick this bike to get it started? 1 kick. Oh, I was so happy. Because, you know, it's kind of embarrassing when you have to kick a bike 20 times to get it started. And then you got to clear it out from where you've flooded it. But she did good. 1 kick, fired right up. I took off, and I was, you know, kind of had my chest out a little bit, I must say. I know that's wrong. But, oh, Lucy, boy, she's so good. You know, I want to get a bike, a road glide, and I'm working on it. I got a plan. Or even an old tour glide that we can modernize to ride, that my wife can ride with me. But if I had a bike to pick from to hop on and ride, it's going to be my Panhead. I just love, you get used to that big, you know, tractor seat with the pogo spring. It's so comfortable. And I got my highway pegs. I just throw the heel of my boots on and could cruise for days on it. I do have to address the front end. I do. wheel bearings, rebuild the front forks, maybe neck bearings, but the neck bearings aren't that old. But while I'm doing all that, just go ahead and do neck bearings as well. But I'd really like to get a Springer front end on her. I think that would really just make her look sweeter than she is, and probably ride, you know, a little bit better too. Before we go, let me show you some projects, because we had three bikes come in, I believe, and another one coming up this week, and maybe another one at the end of the week. So we're going to be busy here in the shop, hopefully shooting some good footage for you, but let me show you what we got going on that's coming up soon. So we've got this Evo Softail, and now if this looks familiar, I've had this bike in here before. This is a customer of mine, and his pastor bought this bike, and it's been up here for some wiring issues and tune-ups and things like that. I can't remember what all I did to it. He added this front fairing on so he can get him some boom boxes and radios going on. So it is up here for a tune-up, but also he's got some issues with the switch. When he hits his back brake, his headlights come on. So I do remember this bike had some really wonky wiring. I mean, some wiring that was just kind of cobbled together. I don't think there's any factory wiring left in this bike. So if wiring issues kind of scare you a little, well, we'll walk through it on this bike here. We got this beautiful Road King in, and this is one of our subscribers. He come, I think, about a 2-hour drive, and he was riding this bike, and he went to do his, you know, just oil changes. And when he pulled his oil filter out, he found little bitty pieces that were colored orange. So if you know, you know. This is an earlier twin cam. It's got the cam chain tensioners, and they are orange. So he immediately did not start it. He didn't ride it. And he's like, well, I'll get to it. You know, I'll change the cam chain tensioners on it. And, you know, life got in the way, got busy. So this bike actually has been sitting and hasn't ran in a couple of years. So not only are we going to be doing the cam chain tensioners, we're going to be going over the bike and making sure and getting it, you know, doing a revival on it. So that'll be a good one. I got another bike coming up supposedly this week. Actually, it was supposed to come up yesterday, but we got busy with festivities, and he wasn't able to come up. But it's going to need, he needs a drive belt, a new drive belt put on. And, you know, I like when customers call and say, oh, it's just a drive belt. I just need a drive belt replaced. And I'm like, hold on. You don't understand. Half your bike has to come apart to get that belt out. So we'll be doing a drive belt on that, and I think a couple of other little things. Now on this bike, when we do the cam chain tensioners, we're going to do it according to the manual. We're not going to cut the push rods. He wants to reuse those. We're going to go in through the top. So we'll be pulling the tank, and he said, I don't know about the condition of the tank. It's been sitting for a couple of years. So we'll probably be inspecting the tank, maybe even flushing it, maybe even lining it. I'm not sure. You know, if you know, you know. Bike has been sitting this long. The minute you take that check valve, the line off the valve, you're going to be replacing the valve or the O-rings up in it. You just, you know, they get dry rotted, and the minute you go to snap it back in, once everything's done, they'll leak. So we're probably going to be addressing that as well. He had a couple of other little things, so this is going to be a nice kind of project for us coming up real soon. So that's going to do it for us this week in the shop. I know it's kind of a shorter video, but I hope that you've enjoyed it. If you have, give me a thumbs up, comment, click down there and talk to me. Maybe I helped you with your Sluggish Evo Harley, or any really carbureted Harley. That's a weird issue. The bike still ran, which it had to have not ran good. And I wish I would have rode it before to see the difference in power. But he assures me, hey, we're good on power now. It gets up and goes. So thank you guys so much. I really appreciate you. And tell your mama and them I said hi.